So, hello everyone, good evening. We have another episode of my channel tonight in regards of a paper which someone posted at my Facebook group that they have published a science paper using statistical methods to model the fine-tuning of molecular machines and systems. And we will have a look at this paper and also a little bit about the ribosome. So if someone wants to come in, I have put here the link, and you can come in and we can have a chat on these topics. So this is the paper. I will provide the link here in the chat so you guys can access it. Joel, do you want to come in? Are you here? Anyone that wants to come in is welcome to come in and have a chat. Okay, I will put the video until someone decides to come in, and then I will stop the video and we can start to have to have a chat.
Ribosome is found in every living system on Earth. It synthesizes all protein in all of biology. It uses the same genetic code, always. The ribosome has the same basic three-dimensional structure in all living systems. The ribosome contains life's most ancient and abundant polymers.
Oh, Joel, let's just finish that video. It's so fantastic, and then we start to talk, okay?
Bill says it's perfect for Halloween.
Hello, Joel. Good night.
Hello.
Yeah, nice
Oops, hold on.
video, isn't it?
There we go.
Yeah,
Yeah, I apologize. I'm having troubles with my mute.
yeah. So
My wife's laughing at me.
that kind of complexity, according to our PhD experts, evolved. What do you think? Is that reasonable?
Heck no. Like we were talking about, was it last night even?
Yeah,
To have anything that has any kind of repetition, much less universal information like DNA has, requires purpose. It requires forethought, design. The exact opposite of evolution theory.
yeah. I investigated the ribosome a little bit further today, and I mean, the more that I investigate, the more it becomes clear how this thing could never have emerged by random unguided events as it is proposed.
Nathan's asking me specifically what would change my mind, or he's asking me what would change my mind. I'd have to ask what more specifically. What would have to change my mind for random evolution to be true would be for chaos theory to be false, which states that the more structured information becomes, the faster it dissipates, and we'd have to understand basic things like on Tangulo shares. How do these non-random, super precise, universal chemical processes, where they never occur in nature outside of living cellular nanotechnology factories? If they did, if we could see evidence of that, of these evolutionary kind of changes, random changes, doing anything productive or useful, much less something as miraculous as life, that would be at least a starting premise for something outside of intelligent design. But we don't have anything that even remotely resembles what we see in the technology of life and the pre-designed, pre-existing, pre-engineered concepts of life, other than our own artificial intelligent type apparatuses, things that I've worked on in my professional career that always require pre-designing, pre-engineering as well, which this further disproves evolutionary type. So yeah, I would basically need all of science, and I would need, again, chaos theory. I'll basically, I would need science to be false.
Yeah. Now I want to show you what I investigated today in regard of the peptidyl transferase center and what they write here. It has three positions here: the A site, the P site, and the E site. Okay, these three positions where the codons are positioned. and it goes through. Okay, and they write here the A and P sites are close enough together for their two tRNA molecules to be forced to form base pairs with adjacent codons on the messenger RNA molecule. This feature of the ribosome maintains the correct reading frame on the messenger RNA. Now, it seems obvious to me that if you don't have the correct reading frame, then the whole thing doesn't work. Do you agree with me?
Yeah, it's making me want to raise the question with what calibrates, what sets the distance between these two pieces of protein.
Yeah, it is very finely tuned. Now, my comment in regards of this is following. That means in order to maintain the correct reading frame on the messenger RNA, the configuration of the A and P sites to be close enough together is vital. How could this configuration have emerged randomly, trial and error? This tiny fact means there is no tolerance here. It is an all or nothing business. The configuration has to be right just from the beginning. A down-up development to get the right distance will be always non-functional. Another important evidence that demonstrates that evolutionary means are not adequate to explain the feat in question.
Right, because if these A and P sites, as they're called, were too close together, then the nucleic acids of the RNA chains wouldn't be able to fit and, of course, do anything. And if they're too wide apart, then I can also see how they probably wouldn't be able to maintain any kind of what do you call it, like a controlled mechanical means of being read. It's kind of like some sort of machine, some sort of like a punch card type machine almost.
Yeah. Now look at this here. This is the forces here. This is the site where the bonding occurs. Okay, and this has to be exactly right in the right distances and the right forces. And
see,
if you don't, and this is absolutely astonishing. It is very, very precisely tuned. You don't get that by chance.
This is part of what I was asking about the other night, about if we were to ever try to actually build a more precise 3D simulation model to show some of these and so to demonstrate some of this technology, to actually show the forces, not just the numbers and the little dots and stuff and the little circles, but the actual, make a representation of the force required to maintain these perfect balances.
Now look at this. In that paper here, quantum mechanics glimpse into peptide bond formation within the ribosome shed light on the origin of life. And they write here, this paper is from 2017. The high conservation of the proto-ribosome, this is, the writer is an evolutionary biologist, so they are not they have nothing in relation to intelligent design. And they write, the high conservation of the proto-ribosome nucleotide sequence is suggestive of its robustness under diverse environmental conditions and hence hints at its prebiotic origin. Now, what does that mean? It is also evidence that a gradual evolutionary stepwise evolution of the sequence would be non-functional, an indication that the ribosome had to emerge from the start fully functional and operational as is. Would you agree with that?
I'm actually having a hard time following along right now. Proto-ribosome nucleotide sequences robustness under diverse environmental conditions.
It means that the high conservation means they did not find many sequences which are diverging from what is. So they do not have ribosomes which diverge substantially in their configuration.
Going back to that universal information type model.
Yeah, if you reduce to the proto-ribosome and look at its nucleotide sequence, it is robust under diverse environmental conditions, and it is conserved. That is the key point. It is conserved means that it didn't evolutionary change.
Well, I think again I was saying the other night was that even if there's different sizes or different types of machine processes of ribosomes, for example, that still would only prove design. And so to see a non-design or I guess a randomly designed, or not even, sorry, a randomly formed chain of events, we have to see the individual parts doing something useful before they were able to become the whole machine.
Yes.
So I don't care about the
This is
different
key point.
types of machines. I need to see how parts of the machines work independently.
And we don't have that. I mean, what do the subunits of the ribozymes or the proteins of the ribosome, what function do they have?
Right. Yeah, because so far this parallels in my mind. You know, in high tech industry, we've got different sizes of CNC machines and plastic and metal 3D printing type machines, and so each different type of model has different capabilities. This is what I see when I look at these different types or sizes of ribosomes. I see different sizes of 3D printing machines.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And some are fancier than others as well.
I mean, they start to try simple, but if you have just an RNA strand, a ribozyme or so, it doesn't have the precise fit as I just described to fit the tRNAs, and they have to be there as well. The distances to put the bond has to be very precise, and you have to have all that machinery together. And it blows my mind that so many people don't understand that.
Well, I mean, have you done any 3D printing yourself yet?
No.
I would challenge anybody that certainly has that. Try to, and you can create patterns to have your 3D machine print other 3D machines. You can create the components, metal and plastic components, to create any machine, including another 3D printing machine. But if you try to, and you have to use very carefully and sophisticated software to not only plan out and tell the machine how to do its work, but if you incorporated just random stuff, you just ran your face across the keyboard, basically to program the 3D models and the steps for whatever you're trying to build, and basically try to teach your printer to randomly print other things, much less other 3D printers, it's going to be a nightmare.
Yeah. And what is particularly interesting in this paper, I've read that before, but the ribosome has internal signaling because there are reaction centers which are distant away, and they cannot interact directly chemically. So there has to be a signaling, internal signaling. How do you get that by random unguided events?
Yeah, it's exact opposite.
And of course, you need a language, and the signaling has to be understood.
Correct. And all that is the exact opposite of random development.
Yeah, I want to read that here. This is really fantastic. Remarkably, within the contemporary ribosomes, the distances between the regions involved in the ribosome's function are far beyond the possibility of any direct biochemical talk. The symmetrical region is located at the heart of the ribosome and chemically connects to all of the ribosome functional centers involved in translation. Hence, it can transmit signals between them.
All right. Yeah. So Laura Hayes in the chat, and others are asking about, we're talking about bias. I would love for somebody who has a different bias than you or I have to explain how 3D printer type machines, like I've compared ribosomes to human 3D printers, and if that's a wrong analogy, please explain why as well. But how that randomness could produce anything useful.
Absolutely. And it is remarkable how they describe the ribosome. Like, for example, here seems to be ingeniously built, and it requires a highly controlled, sophisticated regulatory mechanism. Mm-hmm. Obviously, translation is much more complicated than accidental peptide bond formation. So,
absolutely, yeah.
I mean, how do you get that regulatory mechanism? I mean, regulation is something that we as intelligent beings do. We regulate things in order to get a desired outcome. But unguided accidents, they do not regulate things. They are chaotic. They are stochastic.
Have you read anything in these papers that talk about trial and error? at least being used. Any
What do you
evidence of
mean?
trial and error?
Yeah, they say trial and error, which, I mean,
No, is there evidence that life right now uses trial and error or not?
yeah, that's a good question. That's a good question. And if that kind of proto-ribosome would be there, why don't we see that in nature today? Why don't we see molecules which are in an intermediate stage to become a fully blown and functional ribosome? We don't find that anywhere.
That's what I was wanting to ask that, because our human intelligent design stuff, the things like I'll bring up SpaceX often, the rocket engine designs and other things are that they're very painstakingly done on a 3D engineering type software engineering application first, and mechanical engineers and structural engineers and metallurgists and stuff, they do a lot of pre-engineering before there's any models built to actually put into the 3D printer. And even once they do that, there's a huge trial and error process that we try to minimize and try to avoid waste. And it's extremely difficult. And then there's tools. We'll also 3D print just specific tools and camera parts and all kinds of things that we have to customize on the fly, essentially every day, to try to further understand and adapt to the designs we're trying to improve on. And it's just a tremendous amount of not just trial and error, but like I said, waste and all kinds of things that we would like to avoid having to do to be able to perfect the designs that we're trying to do. And I don't even see that happening in life. It's already all done in God's designs.
Yeah. Hi, Neff. Hi, Chris. How are you guys
Hey.
tonight?
So tell me, how's my audio? I'm using a new headset.
It's okay. It's
Sounds
okay.
good.
Sounds
Is the
good to
volume,
me, Neff. How you
is the
doing, bud?
volume loud
You're-
enough?
Yeah, you're fine too, Chris.
Yeah,
The
it
volume
sounds
is
good,
loud
Neff.
enough?
You're not as loud as you usually are, but you're about as
Yeah,
probably as loud
okay.
as I am.
Okay, so it's a new headset and the microphone.
But you sound,
is
yeah, you
not as
can hear
good.
you fine. So
Okay, thanks. So I was watching Otangelo, you talk about the ribosome. It's also been discovered that the ribosome operates algorithmically, and in which employs choice contingent controls. It actually makes decisions on the fly while it's manufacturing protein.
Yeah, we do that.
Yeah.
It's,
We do that
I
it's
today in
think
our
the
own
incredible.
paper
well,
which John Maddox made me get into attention, which is that the ribosome has nervous-like, it works like a nervous system, and I have it in my library now. I've studied it, and it describes that internal signaling of the ribosome, and as you said
Mhm.
now, that it changes, it makes decisions while it is in operation. And
Yes,
that's
it's amazing. It is.
Yeah.
It really is. Have you read Abel's work on that?
No.
No. Okay. It's fantastic what's being discovered. It's like a microscopic computer switching system, is what the ribosome's doing. It's actually making decisions, like Otangelo said, on the fly while it's manufacturing proteins at blistering speed. It's unbelievable. It's just microscopic nano computer decision making technology made out of a handful of proteins. Unbelievable.
Yeah, and
try
and
to
you have
describe
20,
that.
20 in the bacterial ribosome, you have 20 amino acids joined together in a second. So how do you get that from zero?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was trying to parallel that again, guys. That's very, very similar to what's called programmable logic computers in our own manufacturing processes today. We have PLCs for short that will actually be pre-programmed to make certain decisions using what's called ladder logic for programming to decide at certain different steps of manufacturing to do different things based on inputs and outputs, within a whole design environment. Basically, you have all kinds of sensors that can tell, okay, is this part ready to do this? Is this part doing that? Is this temperature correct? Or is this pressure correct? All these inputs will then allow the machine to make a decision based on basically to do the next step or not, and all kinds of other. It can get extremely complex. And
Yeah.
the way that the ribosome is doing it just looks, again, the way I describe it is light years ahead of our own technology doing these similar things.
Exactly. And the sensors of the ribosome are built into the exacting positions of the amino acids in the proteins of that machine. They are the sensors. The actual physical three-dimensional structural shape of the ribosome's proteins is the sensor. It's examining molecules as they enter and double checking if they're the right one. If not, it rejects them
Yeah.
and waits for the right one. It's unbelievable technology at that scale.
Yeah.
And PLCs are another pure example of design. You have to not only know the process that you're trying to program the step logic for, but then I don't know. It's all design on top of design on top of design.
Did you see the video which I just showed in the beginning? They claim that the peptidyl transferase center was the core particle which would supposedly be enough to start translation, and then in 6 steps the other ribozymes and proteins were evolved and emerged in the ribosome. But I am sure when they will continue to make their investigations, they will outline that each of these external proteins and ribozymes are absolutely essential for the functioning of the ribosome.
Yes, it's truly fascinating. And here's the thing we have to bear in mind. Everybody needs to know and understand that when evolutionists are confronted with this kind of evidence of intelligence, and they know it, they see it, biologists, microbiologists, biochemists, geneticists, they all know about this stuff. And they say there is we get no inference of intelligent design when we look at biological systems. That, when it comes out of their mouth, is a lie. They know they're lying. They are lying because their mind tells them this kind of technology is amazing at that scale. And they know that it tells their mind, like a hammer hitting them in the back of the skull, bing, this has been designed. They get that inference. They won't admit it publicly. That's the difference. They can't admit it publicly. But you know that their mind goes to that place where they're thinking, gee, that looks designed to me. That's unfathomable technology. That looks designed. But they're shutting that down. In the Bible, what it say? It says that they in unrighteousness, they're denialists of the truth. And that's exactly what they're doing. But,
Yeah.
but when they say there's no evidence of intelligent design, that is a bold-faced lie. It's not that they're making a mistake by saying something that's not true. They are lying because they know in the back of their mind this is evidence of intelligent design, whether they want to believe that evidence or not. But that's a lie to say there isn't any, because it truly is, and their conscience tells them that it is. So that they're not. It's not when evolutionists say to you, "Oh, you think evolutionists are lying?" Yes, absolutely, yes, they're lying because they know in the back of their mind that what they're seeing can easily, beyond easily, but let's say at the very, very, very least, be interpreted as evidence of intelligent design. At the very, very, very least. So they are lying. They're lying right through their teeth.
Yeah, ribosomes are fascinating, and they're just another example of when you look. They do it all the time. If you know this, when they'll speak on the evolution of how it postulate how it may have formed, they'll just give basically how it works. You know what I mean? And at the end of it, throw in and then it evolved. And then it did it in these steps or whatever.
Oh yeah.
Never telling how each of those steps.
Oh yeah. It's called hand waving in scientific.
Yes, sir.
In the scientific community, they call that hand waving, and that's
And
exactly
they
what it is.
accuse us that we want that they show every step of how it supposedly happened and how
Right.
evolution could have brought it into existence. But I mean, even in the problem is not that we don't know the steps. It is a conceptual problem.
Yeah.
That is the problem.
That's dishonest. The prove it didn't evolve. You know what I mean? And they shift the burden of proof. You know what I mean? Because they got the theory, they got the burden of proof.
I've been also trying to just consider perhaps maybe if it's a lack of experience, because most people, most atheists, especially that I've debated with over the years, simply have never had a real job in science, much less anything outside of like their academic training or whatever. And I think, and I've been answering people's questions recently. I've been hearing people more and more often ask, it seems, when are these people going to basically start to learn some of these essential observations that we're talking about here? And the simple answer is when they break out of academia and they get into a real science job, because everything that we're doing in every field of science today is specifically and literally trying to reverse engineer these technologies and God's designs and God's intelligent designs for our own. So perhaps that will be again, maybe I'm making it a little more naive or just trying to be more kind about it, but that's what they need. And so they may perhaps just lack that basic experience in the real world. As most college students, professors,
I have tried many times to explain what is, to me, it is so obvious when you design something for a specific purpose, and when someone makes what is designed based on the instructions, both things, the design and the object built upon these instructions, both are the product of intelligence. And it is not feasible that such things could come up by natural means without intelligence involved. And I have really a hard time to understand how people don't get that.
Yeah, I don't know if Lori Hayes is listening or not, but we're having little side conversations in chat. Yeah, see, I wouldn't care about sharing my own anecdotal beliefs about people's adherence to denying science, and that's why I often quote and refer to other people like Einstein and others. But the simple idea of what everybody's talking about tonight is how, such as how there are obvious design flows, what they call bodies of knowledge in the things that we talk about within life and genomics and all these topics, that you have to deny the science of genomics and of basically software engineering, the science of computer technology, the science of information technology, all sorts of things that we see extreme parallels to, if not exact parallels, of life with our own intelligent design technology. To not acknowledge that is literally denying the science of that.
Yeah. To me, they are all pseudoscientists. They accuse us of promoting pseudoscience, but in my understanding, they promote pseudoscience.
That's exactly right.
Well, it's kind of worse than that. Pseudoscience is kind of a silly word to me. There's science, what Bacon essentially started with the scientific method, to fulfill 1 Peter 3:15. And then there's just mythology. There's just hopes and wishes and dreams. There's just theory. So the first step in Bacon's Christian scientific theory or scientific method was to theorize something, have faith in something and an idea, and then to test it. They never, we call it the critics never seem to want to get out of the theory phase, and they never want to test their theories in real time as required by the Christian scientific method. And that's probably the biggest frustrations.
Yeah.
Because how could you test something that you want to make believe happened millions of billions of years ago? That's anti-science.
It is. I'll give you. I know you like quotes. I'll give you one from James Tour. It's he says, "I build molecules for a living. I can't begin to tell you how difficult that job is. I stand in awe of God because of what He has done through His creation. My faith has been increased through my research. Only a rookie who knows nothing about science would say science takes away from faith. If you really study science, it will bring you closer to God."
Absolutely. And so I've got, you probably have heard me already. I've got, I don't know how many hundreds of scientists and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And so that goes back to Entangolo's original topic here tonight, that intelligent design, as I stated in the chat earlier, that has been common knowledge or mainstream in science since forever. It's only not mainstream, quote unquote, in some of the, I guess, the public or pop culture, references out there. But in science, we can quote people all night long that intelligent design has been just obvious in science.
Right. And you probably won't get a lot of scientists who say the opposite. The more I study it, the more I find it becomes increasingly obvious that it's nature did it. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah,
quotes.
Yeah, I'm starting to call it the natural selection of the gaps theory.
Yeah.
But
Tangelo, if you would, let me screen share something for a second.
Yeah.
This is pertaining to what you were talking about right here. I hope it shows up. Yeah, there it is. This is very interesting. This is from the science study. Oh, let me turn the feedback on my microphone off real quick. It's aggravating me. That won't take but a second. I just turned the feature off. Okay. All right. Now, so this is a paper published in 2005 by David Abel and Jack Travers. They state genetic algorithms instruct sophisticated biological organization. Three quantitative kinds of sequence complexity exist: random sequence, ordered sequence, and functional sequence. FSC, as functional sequence alone, provides algorithmic instruction. Random and ordered sequence complexities lie at the opposite ends of the same bidirectional sequence complexity vector. Randomness in sequence space is defined by a lack of Kolmogorov algorithmic compressibility. An algorithm can't be compressed. Neither can a protein, by the way. A sequence is compressed because it contains redundant order of patterns, law-like, etc., etc. Now, let's get down to a little further on where they speak of this is not the right quote. Anyway, this is a fascinating one. I'll find the right one. They're talking about genetic information here, and it's algorithmic. And algorithms, of course, require intelligence. You can't get an algorithm without intelligence. Algorithms are a step-by-step procedure for accomplishing a goal. It requires forward thinking, and forward thinking is a mental process, not a chemical one. So evolution could never have created life because it requires forward thinking. See, it's impossible. It's irrational to believe that chemistry sees the future or considers the future.
Right. Or design things for the future. Now, if I can share a similar quote from a gentleman you probably know, Director Werner Gitt, said several years ago. He's from the German Federal Institute of Physics and Technology, where he says, quote, "We then examined a particular coding system in DNA and discovered that universal information is conveyed within the genes. Using this DNA evidence and scientific laws governing universal information as a premise, we are able to develop sound logical deductions. This leads us to the following conclusion. The God of the Bible exists, and he is responsible for originating and embedding universal information into biological life," end quote.
Yes.
We got countless other examples.
That's just being honest right there.
Well, it's basic scientific observation. If we observe information, much less universal information, which is two different things, in any system, then that's proof of design. Scientifically proven design using information science.
Yeah.
That's not a question. That is irrefutable. Anybody that says otherwise denies the information science principles.
Yeah, Neff, I have put an article together here where I outline that in order to have an information transmission system, you need at least 4, eventually 5 items together. And if one of those 5 or 4 points is missing, then you cannot convey information. And that's what we see in the cell. First, you need a language. You need the information which you then can store in that language, and then you need the information storage mechanism. In our computers, it is a hard disk, but in the cell, it is DNA, which is a DNA molecule which stores the information. Then you need the information transmission system that is encoding, sending, and decoding. That is RNA polymerase. Then a messenger RNA is sending, and the ribosome is the decoding. And eventually, which we see in the cell, the translation, which is the genetic code, which translates the codons to amino acids. If one of those is missing, you don't have a information transmission system. So these have to emerge all together. It is an irreducibly complex information system.
Yes.
Would you agree on that?
Oh, absolutely. The technology is beyond man's technology, not just because we can't make it at that scale, operate at that size, but also because it's superior. Computer scientists have now taken the algorithms handed to them by the geneticists that are found in DNA, and they're using them to write better software than man has ever been able to write before.
Right.
And using God's algorithms that he put into living systems, reading and deciphering information and dealing with copying and modifying information in the DNA
on the fly,
yeah, is better algorithms than what human computer programmers have been writing in software all this time.
Absolutely. Yeah. Just an information technology exchange alone, the internet, the TCP/IP, and the PPP type, all the different protocols that we use today right now, whether it's UDP or any other type of groups of protocols and codecs that we use, have basically we've perfected them as best as we think we can within the foreseeable future. We have made those as efficient as possible without some sort of radically new paradigm. And that's why we look at DNA. We see TCP/IP type protocols. We see information technology exchange codec technology, very similar to our own in life, not just the bioluminescent stuff you've been talking about, Tangelo, but just in the regular, the old school RNA, DNA translocation stuff. That is packetized information transfer technology. We've been trying to figure out how we can incorporate God's technology of how he transfers information from one source to another, same way as we do for our internet type technology and Ethernet, and revolutionize, because we can't really improve our current technology in any reasonable way. So we have to look at God's designs to do the next step.
Yes, God's doing a better job. Tangelo, can I share something again, please?
Yeah, sure.
This is right up the alley of what we're talking about. Okay, so this is more from this is from a paper published in 2012, Dichotomy. And why is it a dichotomy? Because they can't explain it with evolutionism. That's why. So it's dichotomy in the definition of prescriptive information, suggests both prescribed data and prescriptive algorithms, biosemiotic applications in genomic systems, published 2012. They state this.
Yeah, exactly.
This is a secular paper now, and they say functional information has now been formalized into two subsets: descriptive information and prescriptive information. This formalization of definitions precludes the prevailing confusion of informal terms in the literature. The more specific and accurate the term is, term prescriptive information has been championed by Abel. That's one of the authors I just shared a paper with you with a moment ago. Abel was one of those. To define the sources of and nature of programming controls, regulation, and algorithmic processing. Now they're talking about genetics here, okay, in case you don't know. Such prescriptions are ubiquitously instantiated into all known living cells. Prescriptive information either instructs or produces formal function in such a way as to organize and institute a prescribed set of logic gate programming choices. Without such steering of physiochemical interactions by choice contingent causation and control, metabolic pathways and cycles would be impossible to integrate into a cooperative and holistic metabolism. The organization principle states that non-trivial organization can only be produced by choice contingent controls, causation controls. So they're stating that the genetic information and algorithms found in the DNA molecule is clearly a product of intelligent design. This is published in a mainstream science journal. So when evolutionists tell you that nothing published in the science journal supports intelligent design, tell them that was 25 years ago, not today. Things are changing. And these authors are citing Abel, the ones that I just showed you a quote from, as support for their paper. And they're stating outright that you cannot get prescriptive information without choice, contingent, causation, and control. In other words, there's an intelligence behind it because the choices are being made. Matter doesn't make choices. It just does what it does. But choices are based on comparison of information and making a decision about which one to go with. That's a mental process. So the authors of this paper are almost stating, without stating it directly, life is a product of an intelligent designer. And here's one more, if I may. This is from the same paper. They state, and this is referring to the ribosome, Otangelo. You were talking about the amazing ribosome. They say operational analysis of the ribosome has revealed that this molecular machine, with all of its parts, follows an order of operations to produce a protein product. This order of operations has been detailed in a step-by-step process that has been observed to be self-executable. The ribosome operation has been proposed to be algorithmic. They call it R algorithm because it has been shown to contain a step-by-step process flow allowing for decision control, iterative branching, and halting capability. In other words, the ribosome can say, wait a minute, that doesn't seem right. Shut down the machines, guys. Stop for a second.
Which it does.
This is what the machine's doing. This is what a ribosome does, right?
Yep.
It's quality control checking. And it says, contains logical structures of linear sequencing, branching, and conditional control. All these features at a minimum meet the definition of an algorithm, and when combined with the data from the mRNA, satisfy the rule algorithm equals data plus control, remembering that mere constraints cannot serve as bona fide formal controls. We therefore conclude that the ribosome is a physical instantation of an algorithm. The correlation between linguistic properties examined and implemented using automata theory give us the formalistic tool to study the language and grammar of biological systems in a similar manner to how we study computational cybernetic systems. These examples define a dichotomy in the definition of prescriptive information. We therefore suggest, and then they state, we should divide the information into two parts so that we can better examine and be more clear about what we're talking about. But there it is, folks. Ribosomes operate with choice contingent quality controls and causation, and they are making decisions based on algorithms. It basically an algorithm turned into a machine. Is what a ribosome
Well, I wonder why they have not yet come up with the ribosome signaling code. I mean, I can imagine that the ribosome has an internal specific code system upon which it interacts inside and transfers information and signals.
Yeah, and again, I'm starting to wonder why there hasn't been more of a conversation, I guess, in broader sense, because I've been doing SCADA stuff and the PLC stuff I mentioned earlier for over 20 years. I don't know if there's any other maybe George, when he gets online later, hopefully, might have done some SCADA type work, the supervisory command and decision type, which is is exactly what we're describing here. So it's already starting to kind of click in my mind. Just listening to what you were reading there, Neff, how is it possible? It should be possible. It sounds exactly the same to literally write a PLC script of what ribosomes are actually doing using our own current PLC technology from decades ago.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see why we couldn't do it. I just could be extremely complex, but that's half the fun for geeks.
Well, good luck. Good luck with it. First, get yourself a master's degree in computer programming.
Don't even need a master's degree. Anybody with a Raspberry Pi or any kind of Allen Bradley PLC could start doing this stuff. Much less the Siemens and the GE Fanucs and stuff that I used back when I was doing this all for microchip.
And isn't that an amazing thing to think about? It takes people with masters and PhDs are the ones that are deciphering this knowledge about biological systems. So even to discover what God designed and how it works requires people of high intelligence and man's better technology just to figure it out.
Right.
And still don't figure it all out.
Maybe that answers my question then.
They can't even describe it though. Like if you look at the British Society of for Cell Biology, I mean they'll just say they say straight out a ribosome is basically a very complicated but elegant micro machine for producing proteins, and that's the only way you can describe it. I mean, how other way do you describe it without calling it a machine?
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that helps answer my questions. Again, a lot of the human technology for a lot of things we're describing right now, again, that's all old stuff to me. It's, again, stuff I was doing when I was a kid. And so now that we're that's becoming more commonplace, essentially. It's becoming old school, literally. We're able to start to maybe grasp some of those exact concepts in things as complicated as life. And so now that's the next step. So we're literally starting to talk about doing those next steps of building ladder or repeating or mimicking, however you want to put it, the ladder logic of life. in our own machines.
Yes, and when you hear when you provide this knowledge to an evolutionist and you engage with them and say, look, this is what we've discovered, they have nowhere to go except to deny. So they'll say, well, it's not actually algorithmic. We just describe it as that because
Yeah,
it's not really information.
they
It's not
still do that
really
today.
linguistics in there.
It's not the
Denial.
code.
Right. It's
It's
not
not the
code.
code.
It's not.
Yeah.
It's not information. Exactly, Otangelo.
It just
So
seems to be a
they
code,
have
but
to be.
isn't in reality a code.
Yes,
Well,
they have to instantly go into denial, and that proves that they're denialists of what modern science has discovered is that life was designed. And the 1850s ideas of Charles Darwin and his kind, who rode horses and lived in places where they lived, they read books by candlelight and lamplight. That era is gone, and that way of thinking is over with now. Science
Yeah,
has
so
verified life is designed.
That reminds.
makes it.
Go ahead, Joe. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just a couple sentences. I was gonna say that makes it the motivation even higher to want to start to demonstrate these things, these quote unquote natural processes and our artificial processes, just to show them, hey, look, no, this is code.
Mm.
This is how God does it with our own. We can try to mimic it with our own stuff. If it's technology on the human intelligent design aspect, then it's got to be intelligent design on God's design aspect.
Hey,
So you see,
great
so
idea.
you see, there are so many different levels and code languages. We have the genetic code, we have the signaling inside of the ribosome, which is a language which we have not unraveled. And then when the protein comes out of the ribosome, it has to be tagged in order to go to the right place. And the signal recognition particle is recognized as life essential. And in any science paper where they describe the last universal common ancestor, that particle is placed as one of the very important and essential molecules. And I have a paper here which says the universally conserved signal recognition particle delivers 30% of the proteome to the appropriate cellular membrane. So this is basically a GPS system, fully pre-programmed, and which works 100% in a robot-like fashion, where the protein is tagged by that machine. Then somehow there are other machines which know how to direct the protein amongst hundreds of thousands to the right place. That is highest technology.
Well,
It's a
in
mailing
modern
address
information
system.
technology, those are called headers and footers in Ethernet packets today, and it's level 1, level 2 routers and switches that do all of that. There's all kinds of lists and domain groups and whatnot, DNS servers that basically keep a list of where everything is in the internet or in a local intranet even, and it keeps a track. Like say this group of servers is in this direction, this group is in this direction. So when you want to send a packet of something to somewhere, it compares those lists and it'll put a header on the beginning of that packet trail. So okay, these packets are going to go this direction, exactly like DNA does.
Yeah. Here would be a great. That's a great comparison. This would be a fantastic experiment. Get somebody from a local university who has a master's degree in computer programming. Take a man-made algorithm from a human software application, CorelDRAW, EXE, or something else, and then take a genetic algorithm from DNA and print it up on a separate piece of paper, except change the things in it that it's talking about so it's not obvious this is genetic. Instead of nucleotide, replace the word nucleotide with something else, right? So the programmer can't read it and say, oh, this is genetics you're talking about. So, and then place the 2 sheets of paper on a desk in front of somebody with a master's degree in computer programming and ask them, which of these 2 algorithms is more sophisticated? And let him say, give me 10 minutes. Let me look
I would call a nucleotide.
And let him look at those 2, and he will study them. And chances are he's going to look at this one that's genetic, and he's going to say, this one is a more sophisticated one because it's in this area right here. It's not only more complex, but it's also more efficient. And then say, great, could anything without a mind, intelligence, devise something like what's on that paper? He would obviously say, well, of course not. This requires intelligence, right? And then ask him, and then take labels. This one man-made, CorelDRAW EXE, and this one human genome, and put them on pieces of paper and say, what do you think of that?
You know, we've already done that, Neff. Again, even Richard Dawkins and what's his name, the Microsoft guy, Bill Gates, talking about how DNA is code for years. You know, the nucleotide is, or nucleic acid is just a bit. Instead of a binary bit system like our current technology, God used quad bits. Used 4 of them. Codons are just machine language.
Right. Yeah.
Hey, Neff,
Quaternary,
does your microphone? Are you using a headset with a microphone?
Yes, there's something wrong with the sound.
Yeah, well, just you get a little bit of like, when you're too close to a microphone, you'll get a little.
Okay. Great. I'll move it back. Okay, thanks. Is that still loud?
No, that's perfect.
And not only do we already know that, and I think everybody with the basic sense of any of this, any knowledge, will agree that it is code. The only question mark is, is it encoded randomly versus non-randomly? That's the only question left.
Right.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. That's a good point, Joel. That is a very good point. And being that, I mean, even if you spot them, if you spot them DNA and you spot them a cell, an RNA, you still got to account for the information. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I guess that's the basic
The
dichotomy.
bond, you know what I mean? The bonds do not describe the message. You know, there's nothing in that chemical bond that should make that base pairs pair the way they do. But go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to kind of conclude that, or offer the conclusion that that's the basic dichotomy in the religious debates. You know, there's people will either assume God did it, or it just happened on its own. And the real difference is that the people that want to assume this code is developed on its own randomly have no reason to believe that other than pure off faith, versus those that want to assume God did it. They have all kinds of other scientific evidence and other reasons to know that God exists. So since they know there is a God, based on other things outside of just genetic code, it's rational and even scientific to base a scientific assumption that it was designed by the same designer of other things other than just genetic code.
Indeed. Let me share something with you that should cause the hairs to stand up on anybody's back about how sophisticated and ingenious the designer had to be. Along the DNA molecule, it's a double-stranded molecule. There's a string of you have 2 sugar ribose backbone molecules going down the length of the thing, and
Right.
to each rung on that, side of the ladder of DNA and molecule, is along that side are the base pairs, the nucleotides, adenine, guanine, cytosine, and thymine, bound to that sugar ribose.
There's
On
5
the other
sides, right?
side, huh?
There's 5 sides to the sugar backbone, if I remember correctly.
I'm just talking about the DNA ladder. If you untwist DNA, it looks like a ladder, kind of, right? So on each side of it, right, you have two strands, right, in one string of DNA, and so there's 2 sides to it, right?
Mhm.
And so one side, and then on the other side, it's the same situation, right? You got your base pairs bound to it, and on opposite sides, I mean. So, and the interesting thing is, while there is no chemical necessity for an adenine to follow a guanine or a thymine to follow a cytosine, chemical determinacy does not determine the order in which those base pairs,
Right.
the nucleotides, attach to that sugar ribose molecule. Any one of them can be bound right next to any other one. It could be the DNA molecule could be nothing but A, and nothing but A's. It's possible for it to be 1 million A's and then 30 C's and then 900 T's.
Right.
It doesn't matter. Nothing chemical prevents or necessitates that one type of base nucleotide is resting right next to the other. And that's true on both sides of this if you examine the DNA.
That's called Turing complete, the film, if you didn't know that.
But it gets more complex than that, because on one side, one base pair will only bond in that location if the one on the other side is of one of a specific type. I don't remember what those necessities are, but let me give you an example. This is probably wrong, but you'll understand what I'm talking about. Let's say on the left side you've got those strands of the DNA. One, you have a strand on the left, strand on the right. On the left side you have an adenine. Okay. Now, adenine will only bind if there's a thymine exactly opposite to it on the other one, right? You can't. It won't be if it's not a thymine, there won't be an adenine on the other side. It'll be something else. See. Now, that's not a perfect right example. The example I just gave you is probably technically wrong, but that's the necessity is true, and that's true going all the way down the DNA molecule. So they're interdependent with each other on the opposite sides of the DNA molecule, but completely independent of each other along the sides. You understand? But here's the cool thing: when the on each in any one of the sides of that DNA, going down it is information that can be read going forward or backwards, and on the other side, different information is written forward or read backwards. It represents other information.
All
Now,
right.
the
I just wanted to
designer had
emphasize
such
your point.
incredible genius that he made the system completely independent of what type of nucleotides resting next to each other on each side, but made them interdependent with each other, and yet both of them are written in sophisticated software that can be read forward or backward, and the information is different on both sides. Unbelievable.
Right. I was trying to
Incredible.
emphasize your point even further, Neff, that a lot of people, I think, make a mistake. They think that the Turing complete concept that Turing came up with was had to do with just chatbots and automation and things like that, and that's not true. Turing complete simply means when a machine is able to take disparate information inputs and be able to do different types of outputs with it, where it's essentially requires RAM. So you have to have a machine that can be able to take any kind of type of input, rearrange it within a pre-programmed type ability, and then be able to do something, be able to create some sort of purposeful output with it. So Babbage's machine was Turing complete. The ENIAC was Turing complete. God's design and life is Turing complete, as you just described. It can be used. It's information that can be arranged in any order.
Mm, it's amazing. And
Yep.
that's the intelligence to be able to write software that is completely dependent in its physical being with the
It's
software
design.
on the other side, and yet both of them have completely complex information that's independent of each other and can be read one direction and get one information out of it, and read the other way and it's a different information, but they're
Mhm.
interdependent with each other. The best man could do to try to make something like that is to build a machine like that and then assign a meaning to each one of those base nucleotides, so that we write the software out of what symbols are there, not use the symbols to make the software. Do you understand what I mean? We'd have to do it backwards. And even then, how would we do that? Because we'd be limited to the characters, the symbols that we have. Let's say we start with just use four symbols: a cube, a triangle, a sphere, and an octagon. And we're going to use those four as the symbols. That's all we got. And we have to pick the symbols that are by necessity in that order on one side, because they have to be if the other ones are in that other order, right? And then say, now let's assign a meaning to each one of these. And keep doing it until we make software out of it. Man would be sitting at computer desks for thousands of years trying to write a sophisticated software application that way. It's just never going to happen.
Well, we're certainly trying. As a matter of fact, I've done some limited contract work with that, and I certainly can understand. I'm a computer scientist, information scientist. I see this, and I question why hasn't it already been done. I've been having kind of doing other things, but I could see being hired to do something like this easily. I'm surprised it hasn't already been.
Well, I mean, look at it in a broader scope. Look at it like a snapshot from the airplane of the ground and all of the individual models of car that are on the highway. And let's say there can only be four models of automobile on the highway. And then a programmer takes that photograph and assigns a meaning to this particular one, that one, and the other one, and the other automobile. Now he's confronted with the challenge of writing software using only those four symbols in the order in which they are on the highway. You can't rearrange anything. You have to go from what you've got. My unbelievable task that would be. But God arranged the DNA molecule in such a way that it's one set of information on one side, one set on the other side. They're interdependent with each other for being where they are, but they're independent of each other on each side as far as what data can be there and read forward and backward and produced
Oh yeah,
there.
yeah.
Unbelievable
And
technology.
that's just an amateur way of even that's just for the beginning of film. I mean, I'm sure you're aware of that. The biodirectional aspect of the three-dimensional programming language of God. There's epigenetics. There's, and to Angelo goes, he's talking about there's like 7 to 11. You said, I think the other night, different layers of different types of information within the DNA. It's not just the bidirectional sophistication aspect of it. There is just tons of different types of complexity built into it. It is, again, it's mind blowing. It's light years ahead of everything that we're trying to do right now.
Yeah. And on top of, as Neff said, that DNA can be read in both directions. There is also the splicing code and the spliceosome, where you can splice the DNA one section, one gene in over 300 different kinds, and you have over 300 different products. Like in the human genome, one gene can be spliced 300 times, and we have 6 million different protein species. And that is due mostly to the splicing code. So you have to ask, where does that information come from? How is it known by the cell where to splice to have a useful product?
That's a good point, because it's been discovered that DNA is overlapping and nested information. You could start reading the DNA from on this side right here and stop 5,000 base nucleotides away on the other end. And in there somewhere, depending on where you start and stop reading, could be 500 different proteins made.
It's just mind blowing.
Depends on where you start and stop reading from. And
Yeah.
yet each one is a functional product, likely completely necessary and interdependent with hundreds of other proteins, if not thousands.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, if you imagine that our cell, when I did read it the first time, I thought I was an error. So each human cell contains 2.3 billion proteins.
That's an amazing number.
Yeah, I'd like to try to maybe find other, IT professionals and, like I said, skate engineers and others that have had experience with some of these things, these concepts that we're talking about tonight, and just really go into the details of how maybe we could really start to, at least, not if we can't do it ourselves, because that's, again, it's a whole other career, but at least try to find the research of people that may have already started, because it seems so blatantly obvious to be able to be done. We only understand it now, I think, because of the science, the technologies that we've developed, as we keep saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think evolution theory is actually on its last leg. I honestly believe that we live in a very special time. We live in a time where the end of evolution theory is in sight. We live in a time now where evolution theory, we're in the beginning, I think, in the beginning era. We are probably the first generation of humans to live at a time when evolution theory, science has advanced to the point and we've discovered enough things about it, biological systems, that it's obvious to those who are honest with the facts, that the death of evolution theory is imminent, and it will come. When is the question? Will it be 30 years from now, or 70, or 90? But it will come. We've seen the demise
I
of
think it will always find a niche, Neff, where people will insert their belief and say that evolution does it for them. I don't think this will go away.
Right.
Because
Well,
even
I
today we
disagree,
have
because
more than enough evidence, and even science knows that there are many more mechanisms involved in organismal construction, and it is in the science literature out there, and the information is not lacking. We have more than enough information, but it is just a question of preference. When someone wants to be an atheist, he will try to find justifications, and evolution fits so well to justify
Well,
materialism.
that's true, but consider atheists really aren't. Atheists are important, and yet they're insignificant in two different ways. The total population of atheists in the world is not significant. They are not the movers and shakers of the world. Okay, the world's going to go on fine without them. The problem is that they have taken over the scientific community, and that's where they have a heavy hand.
No, not at all, Neff. I try to talk about that as often as I can.
However, but let me
Evolution has
finish
been
my
debunked in
point.
science for 100 years.
So
And nobody
here,
in science talks about this stuff. That's what I keep trying to say. Because I
here's
come from these scientific backgrounds. We don't talk about this stuff in actual at work. We talk about God. We talk about the proofs of God all day long just for the fun of it.
well,
We
here's
only
the
hear about it in academia. That's it.
here's
That's
the point: is that atheism or the denial of a theistic personal God, evolution exists for that purpose and that purpose alone. If there were no atheists in the world, evolution theory would die out relatively quickly, I believe, because if there's nobody to deny that we're designed, why was there going to be? People are not going to fight tooth and nail for something that's been discredited. So, since I believe that the world is moving towards more and more religiosity, not theistic in personal God, but in this whole holistic sort of a new agey religion is what's being swallowed up by the world today. That people are going to move away more and more from atheism. Atheism, I believe, will continue to die. The Bible proves that atheism will not be the ruling class of people in the world, atheists, because it tells us that the man of perdition will come. Some call him the Antichrist, and that he will set himself up to be God. He's going to cure problems for the world. The world's going to love him, and he's going to declare himself to be God, and he's going to allegedly, quote unquote, prove it by doing things like making a stone statue talk. And so that is what the book of Revelation tells us. So, since that is going to happen at that time, the whole world is going to believe, except for those who are Christians. They're going to be the holdouts. You may have some small group here, a small group there, but virtually all of the world is going to believe. They're going to swallow it down. They're going to believe this man is God. They're going to believe the lie. The Christians will not, because they have the Holy Spirit as their teacher, but they will not believe it. But the rest of the world is going to believe. Now, if you believe that God exists and he made the world, why do you need evolution? You don't need it anymore. See, that's my point. And because the world is becoming more and more and wrapped up in new agey religion, where they believe that gods exist, but they're not the personal God of Jesus Christ. They're more outlandish, but there are gods out there. A lot of people today are putting forth the idea that are polytheists. They really are believing that there's polytheism is true. So I think as atheism loses power, loses traction, and theism gains it, and New Age religion and polytheism gain traction, which is what they're doing rapidly now, and I think will continue into the future. I think this is one of the mechanisms that will bring around the end of evolution theory. People are going to be willing to look at the Antichrist and say, "Oh, you're the one who made us." They're not going to believe in evolution at that point.
Right. Well, and just to add to that, the Bible does warn that even the elect will be deceived. Yeah. But no, it's evolution is too strong of a religion. I'm agreeing with Antangelo that no matter how much evidence there is that proves that God exists through life, through all these other mechanics that we talk about,
Well, there's
people
always going to be
believe
those
God
that
does
will
not
deny it
exist.
to their last breath, right?
Sorry?
There'll always be those who will deny him, God,
Right.
to their last breath. They'll always exist.
And that's what I think we're going to face. I mean, for example, the whole mythology, the whole lie that there's more scientists that are atheists, for example, is based exclusively and strictly on a single false media poll from what's called the Pew Research Foundation.
Yeah, I don't believe that myself.
Yeah, it's a total lie. It's disproven. But regardless, the idea that evolution is false has been common knowledge for over a century now. And again, those of us that are actually in science, that are not stuck in if our job, if our money is not, our income, our salary is not based on being subscribed to the atheist academic church, as I call it, then you don't need to believe in evolution. You don't have to, because it's just there's no evidence for it. All the evidence that we do actual research in today proves that life is by design. I should add extreme design. We want to learn how God designed life so we can map it for our own intelligent design processes and everything.
I don't know if we will ever be able, by science, discover enough to do what you are saying, Joel.
Trying, though, is the point. When you see an advanced piece of technology, you want to research it, you want to dissect it, you want to understand it, and then you want to adapt to it. And so, yes, it is extremely sophisticated, but just the fact that we can even imagine to be able to reverse engineer it alone proves its design.
I agree with that. Somebody said in the chat, wisdom teeth are evidence of evolution. The truth is, humans were probably much larger in the past, just like the fossil record demonstrates virtually every genus of life in the world was as well in the past. Much larger because prior to the flood, the environment was perfect and it wasn't screwed up geologically, and climate wasn't screwed up. The atmosphere wasn't screwed up by the flood, and things can't express their best genetic information and grow to their maximum size anymore. So, because other creatures like roaches and elephants and the camels and everything else on the earth and dragonflies were much larger in the past, it's likely, there's no reason to believe it wouldn't be so, man, being an organism himself, was also much larger. Now, if that's true, man's jaw would have been much larger, and we would have had no wisdom teeth problems. Because the reason we have wisdom teeth problems is because our teeth don't fit our jaws. The jaw is too small for the number of teeth that we have genetic information to produce. Our genome says, make this many teeth, and your jaw says, sorry, pal, you got to leave 2 out. I'm not big enough for that. See, that wasn't a problem prior to the flood. It is now, because man is smaller than he was prior to the flood, just like cockroaches or anything else.
It just shows adaptive design. But I think this is illustrating the point even further, that things such as vestigial organs proving random mobility in genetics, that's been disproven well over for 50 years. The idea that the appendix was just left over and the tailbone is left over, all that's disproven decades ago, long before most of us here were even born, I think, yet it's still a belief.
Yeah. Myth. It qualifies as a myth.
Mythologies are hard to kill. Yeah. Especially when people need to believe them.
Yeah. What I love so much is the blind spot. We got a blind spot in our eye. Do you see a black dot in your vision? I don't see one in mine. I don't have a blind spot. What I have is an eyeball designed to work around the nerve that fits in the middle of the back of my cornea. And that's where I get my vision. I get it from everywhere but that spot. But it provides the vision I need for the center of optically, for whatever the center is I'm looking at. There's no blind spot. That's a myth. Humans don't have a blind spot. That's an evolutionist jargon term that's meaningless. We don't have a blind spot. We have an eye designed with it so that it optically perceives what's in the center without sensors for that light being in the center. It's actually evidence of ingenious design. Let's make a camera lens that can do that. Should we?
Well, and that's another good point to bring up, because we actually are trying to do exactly that. But even beyond the optic designs, we're trying to now literally map the human brain, the signaling technology, the actual information exchange between our external sensory organs to our actual brain pathways. And then we're going to try to actually artificially stimulate those to augment our natural senses, as you call them, even more so, not just sight, but everything, hearing, everything. We're even talking about using neural-based technology in the near future for actual telepathy, to be able to actually share each other's thoughts. If we can map our own thoughts electronically, there's nothing we can't do.
I don't believe that's possible, because I don't believe the brain is actually
working on it.
Yeah, I know, but I don't believe that the brain is actually a computer that produces. It's not the producer of thought. It reacts to thoughts, but it's
I actually agree.
The producer of them, and therefore
100% agree with that.
Find patterns in the brain don't represent the thoughts. The pattern is a product.
Correct.
Of the thought.
Right. All the research I've been following, I'd like to coin our brain as a quote unquote meat computer now. I totally agree that and I've got all kinds of neuroscientists, TED Talks that go into details about how our brains are not used to quote unquote think with. But regardless, they still have electrical impulsive, chemical electro type reactions that can be mapped out algorithmically and in a computer technology sense, that we can and we already have been adapting them to actual signal technology, deep brain stimulation technology, all kinds of things that are curing disease. And we're moving up the ladder of technology with that, getting more and more sophisticated. So
Yeah, I believe the brain is a computer that allows a human being a spirit to
right,
sense and interact with the physical world in which
exactly.
we're plugged.
So right, so our spirits will be able to be further augmented by not just the technology that God designed for us, born with, but then helped us learn how to augment our current technology with even more advanced technology. Or
Right. Well,
actually,
if the spirit is not tangible, if it's not comprised of matter and energy, if it's some substance or thing that we don't understand, and I believe that's the case, then here we are plugged into this three-dimensional physical world. Whoa, that's a weird environment for a spirit to be in. We got to deal with that. How do we deal with that? Well, God gave us the tools to do it. He gave us a brain and a body in which we can live in, move in, and experience and interact with this
exactly.
three-dimensional world in which our spirit, which is not made of matter and space and time, energy, has been bound into it. And so we need that to be able to sense the world. And I'm going to put forth a theological idea real quick. You probably won't agree with it. This is what I believe. If you lose your eyesight, your spirit can't see the world anymore. No thought, no vision. If you lose your tongue, your spirit can't speak and it can't taste the environment anymore. Therefore, there is no more taste. If you lose your hearing, the spirit can hear nothing anymore. It's in silence. If you lose your brain, the spirit can't think anymore. This is why the Bible says to go down into silence, because it's lights out, quiet time until the resurrection when you're given a new incorruptible flesh. And as long as you're in
I
a
just want
three-dimensional
to
world, you need a
let me
body
just
to
interrupt you guys. I will have to leave the chat. I don't know if I will come back, but I will leave it open so you can continue the chat. Now, Nef, if you have some papers which you mentioned about signaling in the ribosome, I've left here my email in the private chat. If you can send it to me, it would be interesting. I will have a look tomorrow.
Okay.
I'm gonna
Well,
try to do.
what if we leave? This thing's just going to keep running by itself with nobody.
Yeah. Tomorrow morning, I solve it. I close it. You know, there's no problem. You can keep talking. Okay. Okay. Bye bye.
Good night.
Thanks. Have a good
Yeah, I
one.
want to try to learn more about how we've been at least attempting to adapt current human technology with God's technology, especially with ribosomes. It's got to. I mean, I already can see it in my own mind how it can be replicated. It's got to be projects out there already trying to work on that.
Yeah.
If nothing else, just to describe it.
Yeah. Isn't it amazing?
But no, I actually agree with you 100% what you were describing, Neff, earlier.
Oh, about what?
What the human mind and brain technology interfacing.
Oh,
I absolutely 100% agree with you.
yeah.
And as a matter of fact, the way you were describing that, if you do lose your sight, that's what we're hoping to do in modern biomechanical science, is to basically give the blind sight again, augment it with hardware.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah, God gave us an operating system and a computer so that we can sense the world and interact with the physical world in which He has entrapped our flesh, our spirits. We're trapped in this world, and because this is the environment He intended us to be in, and um, uh, so anyway, I'm going to have to get out of here because I'm going to start my own live stream, and there's a chance that Dr. James Carter will pop in. I don't know if he's going to, but I just got an email from him just now saying that he would be willing to join one of my live streams and test out his audio and maybe chat for a little bit. So I'm fixing to go over to my channel, start a live stream. You're welcome to come to it if you want to. I don't know that he's going to pop in or not, but I just 30 seconds ago got that email from him. So I'm going to do that, and then maybe he'll pop in, maybe not, but we could just enjoy this conversation over there if you like.
Sure. Is it Dr. James Carter you said, or Rob Carter?
James Carter.
Okay. Yeah, SFT had Rob Carter on his show the other day. I was curious.
So anyway, it's been good talking to you guys, Joel. Good talking to you.
Okay.
Chris, you guys.
Yeah, Chris stepped away too, so I think
I'm going to pop over there and start a live stream. If you guys want to come, you're welcome to. I'm going to put the link to join in the text chat. You guys are welcome to pop in if you like. Anyway,
all right.
If you don't, next time.
Have fun, sir. Yeah. Like I said, Chris wasn't sure if he's going to be back or not. I think as well. What did he say? Oh, he said he will be back. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I guess we'll go talk to Neff on his channel. Does anybody else wanted to talk about anything here? I guess especially about ribosomes or not. Gosh, I wish we could find other SCADA experts. Because I really want to share some of these ideas I'm already having myself on this stuff. But all right. Catch you guys later.